world. Welcome to the Shannon Joy Show. Hello, world, and welcome to the Shannon Joy Show. We're broadcasting live from the Joy Virtual Studio right here in the beautiful Finger Lakes region of New York State. It is so great to be with all of you. Today, it is Tuesday, April 15th, and we are thrilled to welcome once again very special guest. She's becoming a regular here on the Shannon Joy Show. Her name is Catherine Austin Fitts, and we are going to talk today about Trump's digital control grid. And it's not just Trump's, it's something that has been being built for the past 10, maybe even 15 years or further here in the US and across the globe. But it is a continuation of Biden era atrocities in an attempt to end God-given natural rights. This is a big show today. Everyone is going to need to listen up, even though so many believe that we have our guys in the White House. This control grid is still being built. You need to understand it. You need to not fear it, and you need to prepare to resist it. And my concern is that there are too many conservatives and Christians and Constitution loving Americans that are not concerned about this because they believe they are safe with this administration. Today, we're going to talk about that with Catherine Austin Fitts. You should be alarmed because the calls just might be coming from inside the house. She is the president of Solari, a former investment banker, and she is ringing the alarm bell on what she has termed the digital control grid, not just here in the United States of America, but across the globe. She's one of the foremost experts in the world on this topic, and this building of the control grid seems to be imminent and accelerating under the Trump administration with Doge and Elon Musk as well. According to Catherine, the digital control grid is an electronic network of digital telecommunication and information systems that allow individuals to be surveilled, tracked, and subject to invasive controls, among other things. Today, we're going to talk about the Internet of Everything, human energy harvesting, feudalism, neo-feudalism, and a new 21st century slavery, where we, the people, the human being, is the consumer, the product, the experiment, and maybe even in the not so distant future, an energy source. These are the dystopian plans of some of the madmen that are in control, who have access to enormous amounts of power and wealth. And they are operating behind the scenes, not just in the US, but across the globe. They are installing heads of state who are submitting to their control mechanisms. And every human, if you love your children and you love freedom and you love liberty and you want to survive in the 21st century, you're going to have to pay attention to all of this. So we're going to bring Catherine in just a moment. I do want to check in with Annie, our producer, who is producing the show today. Annie, I'm hearing a little bit of feedback. Want to make sure that we have all of the satellite phone store Faraday equipment away from the computer, because I'm getting a little bit of that static still. Are you getting it? Okay, so that is just annoying in my own ear, but no one in the audience can hear it. Okay, great. Fantastic. Well, that is a perfect segue to thank our sponsor today, one of our amazing sponsors today. You're going to hear from the satellite phone store. sat123.com/joy is my own unique URL, and I just love this company. Today, we're going to be talking about their Faraday technology and their line of Faraday bags, blankets, beanies, you name it. This is an amazing technology that blocks every type of signal you can imagine, including signals going out from the Shannon Joy Show. So Annie yells at me every time I try to do a demo with a Faraday bag or Faraday technology. She's like, get that thing away from your computer. And so, but it is true. This Faraday technology blocks cell, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, GPS, RFID, NFC, EMP, EMF, 3G, 4G, 5G, LTE, you name it. This is going to protect your devices from an EMP attack or any type of interference. It's also going to protect you from your device. It blocks those electromagnetic frequencies from invading your brain, your body, your organs. And we know there's so much new information and studies about what all of these electronics are doing to our bodies. So this technology is amazing. You're going to hear from them today. The satellite phone store is an unbelievable sponsor of the Shannon Joy Show, sat123.com/joy. That is sat123.com/joy. And make sure that you always use the JOY promo code for 10% off. So thank you to the satellite phone store. And thank you to all of you on the Shannon Joy live chat right here on Rumble. We have CJP Rumble with us. We have Be My Valentine. Wayne 1055 is with us today on the Joy Rumble chat. Mark the Regan with us as well. And MC114, you guys are all thrilled to hear from the amazing Catherine Austin Fitz. So we are super pumped to get things started. Of course, we're thankful for our platform partners over at Rumble, Twitter, Spreely TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, and Radcast Network, which is promoting the Shannon Joy Show and the podcast. So if you are one of our new podcast listeners, we're so thankful to have you. Make sure you leave a 5-star review and leave a comment as well. If you guys have comments and questions regarding today's show, make sure you put them in the live chat on Facebook or Twitter or right here on the Rumble chat. And do us a favor and put those in all caps so that we can get to your comments and your questions. So Breathe Free Air is with us today on the live chat. New listener, stoked on your show. Breathe Free, I'm so glad that you're here. Green Tea 369 is with us as well. Yes, just say no to the gold star on your driver's license. I've heard that it's not true that you can't fly without it, but it will only take a little bit longer at the airport. And yes, we are going to be talking about that today. And in fact, I have this amazing resource, if you guys can see it. You can lose your real ID. This organization is unbelievable. Citizen Council for Health Freedom, that's CCHF, an amazing organization that is putting out killer information about the real ID and the digital ID, especially in light of Kristi Noem's ridiculous video that she put out the other day, lying to the American people and saying that you need a real ID in order to fly. You do not, but if we don't resist it, you might in the future. And so this gives you a step-by-step way. Yes, if you have to look at your license. If there's a gold star on your license, I kid you not, that means that it is a real ID, but you have an option to go back, swap it out for a regular old ID at your DMV. And this website has the step-by-step instructions for you to do that. They're actually linked in the show notes of the Shannon Joy Show today. So scroll down, grab that link, and learn your rights. We are going to have to stand up, speak out, and resist. This is one of the reasons I just love Catherine Austin Fitz. She is a wealth of information. A lot of it is really scary information, but she leads with the message to never fear. There is so much that we can do locally from the bottom up to take apart and dismantle what they're trying to erect for our 21st century future. And that is why Catherine has been making the rounds and her voice has been platformed more and more. I am so glad for that. She is the president of Solari, which publishes the Solari report. It is a subscriber only report and it is a must subscribe for the Shannon Joy audience. Also linked in the show notes of the Shannon Joy Show. She's a former investment banker and also a government agent. She worked under the Bush administration and has such unique perspective regarding everything that is going on in the world today. Without further ado, can we please welcome Catherine Austin Fitz back into the Joy virtual studio? Welcome, my friend. It's been way too long. And as I mentioned, you're becoming a regular.
Yeah. So I just want to say what one of my favorite quotes from the vote is: "Those who are awake live in a state of constant amazement." And I love listening. I'll see your tweets or I'll get a snippet of your show, and you're just like, "What?"
Mind blown, mouth dropped, or jaw dropped. I mean, on a regular basis, because it's it's breathtaking,
You
frankly.
remember when we were kids, we would go off and do something that was really over the line, and you'd come back and your mother would say, "What did you do?" That's the Shannon Joy Show. What did you do?
It's
Yeah,
insane. It's insane. We're
right.
governed by madmen. I don't know what to
We're,
say.
well, we're governed by people who need a good spanking.
Yes,
That's
exactly. I started with megalomaniac, control freak lunatics back in the day when describing, because people would be like, Shannon, who's behind all this? And I'm like, I don't know. Bad people with God complexes and way too much time and money, right? And so I've morphed now into, as we move into transhumanism and technocracy, madmen and mad scientists, again with a God complex.
so basically what you have is, so the bureaucracy that runs the planet are the bankers. So it's the central bankers.
Yep.
And basically, what you have is a group of people who have concluded that the best way to manage risk and manage their situation in this environment is to institute total control, which with new digital technology and AI they can now do. They can now
Mm,
make they can now make complete control economic and work for them. And so that's what they're doing, and they're doing it because they don't think the other options work. And
right.
so rather than explain to you or invite you to come along or build a consensus with you, they're just on a just do it pathway. And the technology gives them a all sorts of new possibilities that didn't exist 20 years ago.
Well, and this is why it is a moment in time where there should be alarm, not fear, but alarm that many of the people that we trust, whether you're a Democrat or a Republican at this point, because from my perspective, Catherine, over the past 10 years, this has been a bipartisan effort and not even necessarily an effort. It is as if both political parties and the leadership in both political parties have just stepped back. They've just
Right.
accepted the inevitable of global control and they're stepping back and just letting it happen without even giving we the people a chance to understand it fully.
Well, so let me step back and look at it from the big picture. If I said to you, we have to eat at McDonald's or Burger King, you would say, no, I'm not eating it either. Okay.
There you go.
Right. So you're getting swung back and forth between the Burger King and the McDonald's choice, the duopoly. And
Mhm.
what you need to know is there's another alternative. Now let's look at the federal government, whether it's and the executive branch, whether it's run by the Democrats or the Republicans, it doesn't matter. And I'm going to grossly oversimplify. Every week, the New York Fed, which runs the government's bank account, goes out through the primary dealer network and arranges for 50% of the budget to be borrowed and dropped into the federal government bank account. Now, if we didn't have a debt based currency, we could just issue the currency from the Treasury. But let's put that aside. We have a debt based currency now. The federal government, so think of this as like kids and dad, right? So dad puts your allowance in the bank account every week, and if he doesn't, you don't have enough money to take the bus to school, right? Right. So you're financially dependent on dad, and dad puts the money in every week, and if you don't do what you're told, what happens?
He takes the money.
Dad cuts your allowance, right? He cuts your
Mhm.
allowance or he freezes your allowance. Okay. So that's the relationship. And whether it's Democrats or Republicans, so the Democrats were going to shut down the economy with net zero alliance, and climate change. Now we're going to use tariffs. But if you look at the impact, it's basically the same thing. Although
Right.
one generates a lot more money in taxes and a lot more patronage, right? But you have to understand that both both parts of the pendulum are swinging back and forth in the same construct where they don't control.
So the politicians, despite what many Americans think, despite what the media, both left wing and right wing, tell us, really are not in control. How far does that extend? I mean, are we getting into
So, yeah,
presidential?
but yeah, but let me talk about the problem that the politicians have. So I told you this story once. There's a wonderful senator in Idaho who said he said every year Idaho sends to the federal government $1, and then we get $1.19 back because the Fed can print money, right? They can
Right.
borrow money. And he said, every time I tell my constituents I want to enforce the Constitution, they say, no, I'd rather have the 19 cents.
Right.
Okay.
So
Okay.
we're
So the
part of the problem
problem,
too.
the problem starts with the general population. So we've talked about the red button story. If anybody's interested, they can go to our website at Solari or go to YouTube and look up my name and the red button story. And I explain the financial dependency of the American people
Mhm.
on, the rackets that run the federal government and their dependency on criminal enterprise. So,
Right.
I've always said crime that pays is crime that stays. And one of the first things you learn when you go high up on Wall Street is you are told again of the story of the crucifixion, where the crowd votes for the criminal and doesn't vote for Jesus.
Right. Right.
That is the you have a cycle of disrespect, but the message upstairs is we want a free check.
Yes. It sounds like I've likened it to my audience in the past as a very, very toxic and abusive relationship
Right.
between the government and we, the people, right? Like we keep going back. It's like an abused spouse who keeps making excuses and doing the same thing over and over to the partner that is abusing them. And it's
Well,
because
but
all of the reasons. Yet we continue to go back because we don't think we have any other option, right? And so, what you're proposing is that we, the people, as Americans, as citizens, need to understand that we do have other options outside of the two party
right.
political system and
You
heavy handed top down governance, right?
Right. So you do have an option. So let me use did I ever describe the popsicle index to you?
No, I can't wait to hear about
It seems very appropriate because pink is one of my favorite colors and you're wearing
it. Yay.
pink.
Okay.
So it's a very
my,
popsicle story.
it's
Okay.
my signature color, by the way.
So
So,
when I was Assistant Secretary of Housing, for my first 30 days, I started to feel this sort of free floating anxiety because I realized all the real estate brokers, all the mortgage bankers, all the home builders were lobbying me to do something that would make their stock go up. And I realized nobody's lobbying me to make neighborhoods wonderful. There's an imbalance. So I
mm,
sat down and I started to do a lot of analysis of how the federal credit money worked at a county level. And what I realized was, within a community, you have what I call living equity. You have people, you have livestock, you have plants, you have animals, you have life,
yep,
right?
yep.
And then you have financial equity. And what's interesting is all financial equity comes from life. If you're going to
Mm,
build a great family enterprise, it starts by building a great family, right?
right, right,
And then they build enterprises. But it always comes back to fresh food, healthy soil, healthy water, healthy people, healthy farms. It always, taking gold out of the ground, it always comes back to life. Anyway, so I said we need, we have the S&P index, we have the Dow Jones index. We need an indicator for the health of a place that can't be controlled by the bankers. So I came
wow.
up with the popsicle index. Okay?
Hmm.
And here's how the popsicle index works. The popsicle index is the percent of people in a community who believe a child can leave their home, go to the nearest place to buy a popsicle alone, and come back alone safely.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, what you will find is there is a direct correlation between the value of real estate and businesses in a community in the popsicle index. So, for example, one of my old plans was I buy a lot of real estate in a neighborhood with a low popsicle index. I do a series of things that make the popsicle index go up and my real estate increases in value. I
Really
make money.
interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, what you'll discover is since basically the 50s, the stock market indices, so the Dow Jones index when I was a little girl running around in West Philadelphia was 150. Okay, so imagine it's the Dow Jones index, the S&P index have been going up, up, up my whole life, and the popsicle index is relatively going down.
So
S-
true.
right. And so that suggests there's a win-lose relationship between life and living beings and money.
Mhm.
And so what I was trying to do was re-engineer so that there was a win-win relationship. So you could make money getting the popsicle index to go up, and so, the popsicle index and the S&P index would go up or down together. You would have a win-win, lose-lose relationship. And so you weren't engineering a political process where everybody was working hard to make their stock go up and they didn't care about the popsicle index, right? And
I'm yeah. I'm sure that your ideas were very well received by all the government bureaucrats and political people in Washington.
oh no, 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 no. I was basically saying the civil service shouldn't get paid unless the
Right.
popsicle index is going up. So right. But here's what, if you look at how we know that all financial wealth comes from life. So how can we keep an economy going where the Dow Jones is going up and the popsicle index is going down? It's not. You're liquidating life. you
Mhm.
know you're destroying your soil, you're
Everything.
depopulating, you're doing all these things. And that's why so many people have said I hate the financial system, because they intuitively see the destruction and they don't understand. No, what we're doing is we're using the federal budget and credit to engineer and basically rig the system, so people are incentivized to do that. Now, I have an online book called Dylan Reed and the Aristocracy of Stock Profits that was designed as literally a case study for a business professor to show you how financial taxpayers' money is used to make things that are uneconomic
Mm.
seem and look economic and incentivize people to do it. It's the story of a private prison company, and how basically to put a lot of people, many of whom are innocent, in prison requires putting the US taxpayer in prison. And so what are we seeing in the news today? What we're seeing is people saying, the deficit is out of control, the spending is out of control, we have to do something, which of course leads us into what's happening in the Trump administration, and with the Doge ransack of, privatizing data in the government. So, but we have used the federal credit in a highly uneconomic way, and we've used taxpayers to basically finance the building of the digital control grid and centralizing, political and economic power in the economy.
Well, and yes, that's gonna be, the topic that we discuss in depth today on the Shannon Joy Show with Catherine Austin Fitts. An exclusive report is dropping tomorrow from Solari. This is Catherine Austin Fitts's organization. They produce the Solari report, and this is a detailed explanation, 20 plus pages on the digital control grid. It is being erected by both political parties, and you need to understand the plans that they have for us in the 21st century. Very good for them, not good at all for us. So we're going to go to a quick break. We're going to come back and delve deeply into this discussion with our guest, Catherine Austin Fitts. Please consider going to the Solari report and signing up. We'll pop up that link in the live chat. We're going to hit a commercial break. When we come back, we're going to continue this discussion. If we have time towards the end of the show, we will open it up for comments and questions for those of you on the live chat on Facebook, Twitter, or Rumble. We want to hear from you. So pop those questions into the live chat, put them in all caps. Annie will grab them and we'll save them for the end of the show. We'll be back in a minute right here on the Shannon Joy Show. Hey, everyone. So, you know what is scarier than a storm or a blackout? Being completely cut off, alone, no phone, no internet, no way to reach anyone. This is why I trust sat123.com and their satellite phones to keep me connected no matter what. With a satellite phone from Sat123, it doesn't matter if you're out in the wilderness or caught in the middle of a disaster. This phone works when cell towers don't. It's the ultimate tool for staying in touch when everything else has failed. Here's the best part. Sat123.com is family owned, 100% committed to quality and reliability, and they believe in keeping you and your family safe wherever you are. Right now, if you go to sat123.com/joy, that is sat123.com/joy, and use the JOY promo code, JOY, for 10% off, you'll get 10% off your entire order, which is a phenomenal deal from an amazing company that supports the Shannon Joy Show. Be ready for anything. Stay connected with sat123.com/joy. Shannon Joy here for PCM and Associates. If we've learned anything over the past 4 years, it's to expect the unexpected. Well, proper asset allocation can minimize the impact of the unexpected. From inflation to tax rates to energy efficiencies, we can never really know what we're going to get. Allocating funds among various categories like growth, income, international, tangible assets, and cash can help investors prepare for anything. PCM and Associates practices asset allocation for a rate of return. Call Don Pullano today at 1-800-536-1368. That's 1-800-536 1368 for financial independence with a wealth manager who shares your values. Call Dom today. So, in the dark days of COVID-19 lockdowns in 2020 and 2021, there was one pharmacy that was helping Americans get the medications they needed. Medications like ivermectin. And that pharmacy was All Family Pharmacy. They're not typical. Most pharmacies will make you jump through hoops to get the meds you need, but they won't. They'll let you order in bulk so you can stock up for up to a year. No waiting, no red tape, whether it's ivermectin, antibiotics, or emergency kits, they have you covered. Because when it comes to protecting your health, you should be in control. It's so easy at All Family Pharmacy. You order online, the prescription is handled for you, and the meds are shipped right to your door. Stock up now before you need it. Go to allfamilypharmacy.com/joy. And if you use the JOY10 promo code, you'll get a full 10% off your entire order all the time. That's allfamilypharmacy.com/joy, JOY10 for 10% off so that you can stock up and gain that peace of mind. Welcome back, everyone, to the Shannon Joy Show. The political chaos continues here in the United States and abroad. And with political chaos, there is a direct relationship to the price and value of gold and silver. And some of the big names in the mainstream news media are beginning to see as gold and silver continue to surge amidst the tariff craziness. This is from Bloomberg. Gold trading frenzy erupts in China as tensions with the US escalate. And from this report, they're saying that demand for gold is strengthening, with investors seeking safety as a new trade war unfolds between the world's top two economies. They say that the precious metal gold could reach 4,000 an ounce in the next year, about 25% over current levels. They also say that much of the onshore strength comes from the demand in investment bars, inflows to ETFs, and banks' gold accumulation plans, an investment product that allows retail investors to accumulate gold on a regular basis. This is all completely related to the chaos here in the US and abroad. This is why so many people are putting together a metals strategy, and that includes keeping metals physically, owning gold and silver on your person, but also considering an IRA or a 401k backed with physical gold and silver. That's exactly what Colonial Metals does. You have met Paul Stone, one of the founders of the Colonial Metals Group and a sponsor of the Shannon Joy Show. This is the company I trust for all of my gold strategies. And it's the company that you can trust as well. Please consider going to colonialmetalsgroup.com/joy. That is colonialmetalsgroup.com/joy. What I love about them, there is no pressure. They don't do any doom or fear selling. They meet you exactly where you are, wherever you are in life and in investment. They will help you craft a strategy that fits you and your family perfectly. And they do it in a super friendly way. They love the Joy audience. So you won't feel intimidated. You won't feel any pressure. It's just a great experience. So please consider going to colonialmetalsgroup.com/joy. Make sure you use that URL so they know that we sent you and get that process started. It is never, ever, ever too late, ever, to start your gold and silver strategy. We are going to welcome back into the Joy virtual studio now the amazing Catherine Austin Fitz, who is with us today, the president founder of the Solari Report. You have a big report, an exclusive must read. We mentioned as we began to prep for this show, this is one of those reports that you're going to want to download, print out, make copies, send to your congressman, bring to church, share with your neighbors, keep it on your person, because this is going to be the definitive work that I'm sure many people will be referencing for quite some time on the digital control grid. So first and foremost, thank you for your work on this and your team's work on this. Tell us a little bit about this report, and then we're going to get into defining this control grid, the aspects of it, and how people can prepare.
So We keep being asked, what is the Trump administration doing in terms of stopping the control grid? And then I have to explain, no, they are moving at very high speed to build the control grid. And I said, I believe one of the reasons Trump won as well as he did was he had the support of the bankers to do so, because they saw the Republican side with election fraud and immigration, among other things, as the way to get the control grid.
Right?
So I've been keeping, Shannon, you would know, the steady lists of all the different categories and all the different things they're doing, from actions by the president to actions, executive orders and executive actions, to legislation, to the actions that Doge is taking. And as this list keeps getting longer and longer, and people keep asking me, for the list, and finally I said, okay, well, we're going to do a new list and we're going to add everything up and publish it. And I think, this will not be the definitive study, because if you look at how many things they're doing weekly, it keeps getting longer and longer. We're up to over 20 pages.
Wow. Okay.
So yeah, and this is short form, so this is not, detailed long descriptions.
Right.
But part of the reason it's hard for many people to see the control grid snapping into place is you have all these different sections, and while they're not integrated together, it as they grow and when they integrate together, so that you can control your transactions and you can control your resource use. So I can stop your car from driving, I can turn your utilities off, I can shut off your money, I can stop you from transacting. That kind of control requires an infrastructure of data centers, and really AI is the final bullet that really brings it all together in what I call the digital concentration camp. So most people are thinking this is perfectly innocent. What's wrong with a real ID? I can see why the government needs to make sure I'm not an illegal immigrant. And so each piece looks innocent, and it's until you see them snap together that you start to realize, oh, we have a problem. And if you look at all the different things, so let's just walk through some of the things.
Sure.
Okay, so let's start with money, because ultimately my concern is that this is going to end your financial freedom,
Okay.
because we're going to use technology to basically shut down the Constitution. So you can have a constitutional convention and revoke the Constitution, or you can use just technology to basically supersede and oversee it. So in the financial area, one of the things the president has done is he has come out and announced no CBDCs in executive order, but we are going to move forward with stable coins.
Huh.
And stable coins will, so it's interesting. If you look at the New York Fed, a CBDC would be done by the Federal Reserve, presumably the New York Fed and the Fed member banks. Um, if you look at the banks that own the New York Fed and the Fed, instead they're going to create subsidiaries and they're going to do programmable money through their private subsidiaries. So this is how the Fed gets around the disclosure requirements and other obligations that they have to Congress. So it's sort of like meet the new boss, same as the old boss.
Right.
So the banks that own and control the Fed are going to do it directly without going through the Fed. They can
Which
still
is
co-
which is troubling. You have mentioned in previous interviews that in terms of monitoring or reining in or trying to provide oversight to government institutions is hard enough. Getting information in terms of a Freedom of Information Act or trying to get that out of the government is complicated enough. But in your experience, the more difficult information to get is the information from the private contractors, the private entities contracting with the government, because they have, privacy laws built in, or a different relationship. And so we're looking at it as an expansion of that. And a lot of conservatives and Republicans are cheering this. They're calling it the privatization of government, right? And they're like, this is great. We hate government.
no,
We
this
hate
is
the federal
this
Reserve.
is basically you're having the Federal Reserve banks do your stable coins, which are going to be programmable money, but do it in a way where Congress doesn't have direct. I mean, the if you do it through the Fed, they have direct obligations to the Congress.
Right.
Now there's no direct obligations. They're indirect, and they're almost impossible to enforce. And so this is going to give them far more freedom. And if you look at what they want to do with stable coins, they not only want to issue them domestically but internationally. And if they do what they say they're going to do, they're literally planning on trying to get as many people in the world on the dollar system through programmable stablecoins. In one sense, it's a very clever action. If you look, Senator Haggerty of Tennessee has sponsored the Genius Act. It's going through Congress now, and if you read it, it's basically the framework and the plan to do what I believe will be programmable money through the same banks that run the Fed. So it's the
Mhm.
Fed without the obligation to Congress, if you will. Okay, so the president has created a White House crypto and AI czar and done a series of executive orders to promote all digital systems. So if you want to interact, so if I want to pay my taxes, what the president is now saying, you can't use checks, you can't use money orders, you have to interact digitally. And of course, what that means is millions of people who don't use digital systems are going to have to find a way to either get on digital systems or interact with the federal government through
Can I pa
digital systems.
can I pause you there for a moment?
Sure.
So what you just said to me is that President Trump issued an executive order. See, this year, I mean, this was tragic, but I just paid my taxes, my federal and state taxes yesterday. Nothing like last minute Sally, right? For paying the tax bill. So I go into the bank, but it's a physical check. That's the way that interact
Right.
with the government. I don't do the digital. Are you saying that Trump just passed an executive?
So I have always done paper, and my I require having a CPA for our businesses that do paper
Okay,
because I want a paper record. And one of
me
the
too.
things I'm going to tell you, he's now demanding digital interaction with the federal government across the board. And how and when this goes into effect, remains to be seen. But what I will tell you is we have a great piece up at Solari on archiving. You need to keep copies of your records.
Okay,
Okay, now I have
great.
lived through an 11-year process where the federal government tried to frame me. And
Mm,
one of the reasons they couldn't frame me is I had copies of everything and I kept great copies, and so they couldn't make it up.
okay,
But you need to archive your records.
okay.
Okay, so again, trying to force an all digital system. Now, we know between 1998 and 2015, when the last Trump administration took the government financials dark, there's 21 trillion missing from the Department of Housing and Urban Development, a trillion and 20 from the Department of Defense. There has been no effort that I know of or heard of to do anything about that. That has been completely silent. And if you look at the agencies, they're mostly targeted by the Doge operation. Um, they're not going after money at HUD and DOD from everything I can see. What they have done is they said they want to lay off half the employees at the Department of Housing and Urban Development. And unfortunately, if you want to burn up the record, that's a great way to do it, is destroy the institutional knowledge. So not to say that re-engineering HUD isn't couldn't be a very good idea. Okay, so let me keep going.
Can I pause for a moment on there?
Uh-huh.
And this is where many on the conservative right side, it's very difficult to get them to understand how dangerous this is. First and foremost, because they believe that these guys are on their side and on their team. So there is a baked in trust quotient there that is, I think, very dangerous for conservatives and Republicans as we move forward. But second of all, they look at this as cutting government. This was just reported in Fortune magazine. Elon Musk just drastically dropped the Doge savings goal from 2 trillion to 150 billion. So they're
He dropped it from 2 trillion to 1 trillion, and now at the latest cabinet meeting he's announced 150 billion, and there are people who debate that. Now,
right.
what happened between 2 trillion and 150 billion? If you said to me, I want to build a control grid, go get the payment data in the US government you most need to control: IRS, Social Security, and Treasury.
Treasury.
Go get that. And after you've gotten that and taken that, and there are many reports that indicate, that data has gone off and gone into private AI in
Unbelievable.
violation of many, many laws, including the privacy laws. But if that has happened, now that you've got the data you need to control, you're dropping your target from 2 trillion to 150 billion. But if you look at what they've done with the continuing resolution, with the rollover of the proposed tax cuts as well as the proposal to increase the military budget, they have basically put into place enormous increases in expenditures. So the net that the net result after 80 or 90 days is to dramatically increase expenditures, not decrease them.
Exactly, which we've been reporting here on the Shannon Joy Show. I get smacked around by my audience every time I tell the truth about
Well, but
what
here's the thing, don't worry about personalities, follow the money. Let's
I
look
just
at the actions.
exactly.
Okay,
I
just
call it the
look.
paper bag rule. I have my own rule. It's the paper bag rule. Put a paper bag over their head and pretend, or even better yet, pretend it's Obama doing it. And then ask yourself, how do I feel about this? Right? Like,
Well, but here's the thing, it's not just the guys in the White House doing this, we're all doing this. I
yes,
mean,
yes.
if you said to me, "Look at all the 30 different parts of the control grid, who's building it? We're all going to work in building it." You look at our 401ks and IRA, we're all financing it. If you look at our purchases, we're all making those companies rich by, supporting them and shopping with them. We're putting their software on our computers. We're giving them access to all our data. We're using their email.
Mhm.
So this is not just the guys in the White House. This is all of us.
Right, right.
We are doing this, and we don't understand that those 30 individual wonderful pieces, when they snap together, bam, you're in a digital concentration camp.
Yeah. Let's talk about more of those pieces. Again, just for definition's sake, so that everybody who's just popping in, we're talking to Catherine Austin Fitts. Tomorrow, the Solari report is going to drop a 20-page report on the digital control grid, exactly what it is, the mechanisms, the pieces that are going to snap together. Again, as we mentioned, this is a bipartisan initiative. And the definition here, according to Catherine, quickly before we get into the pieces again, it's an electronic network of digital telecommunication and information systems that allow individuals to be surveilled, tracked, and subject to invasive controls applied to their financial transactions and resource use, such as electricity, food, water, transportation, which compromise, if not completely end, all human rights and liberties. Control grids operate with significant data collection. This is likely the purpose of Stargate, which was announced as an initiative by the president and the tech bros and some of the banksters behind him. Necessarily, we are going to need football field length data processing centers powered by nuclear reactors in order to collect all of this data, and artificial intelligence to apply social credit systems that can be dictated on a highly centralized basis. Think the Chinese Communist Party and their social credit scoring system. A digital control grid ends financial freedom, replacing markets with technocracy, a system run by rules created and maintained centrally by unelected experts. It ends our Constitution, our constitutional system. It ends representative democracy and our representative republic. It ends the Bill of Rights. It ends our system of governance. It ends privacy and the right to pursue happiness. It ends all of that once we submit ourselves to the surveillance and control system. This also involves Elon Musk and everything he has his hands in, including the creation of the satellite networks and Starlink. So back to Catherine Austin Fitts as we continue. I just wanted to pause there and give people that definition, which is yours. So I am quoting Catherine, when I read that to you, but this is what we're dealing with. So you started with the money. That's going to be, yeah,
So can I just give a couple of examples, because it's very
yes.
hard for people who haven't lived in this to fathom it. Imagine we're in a pandemic is announced, and suddenly you're not allowed to go more than a mile from your home.
Mm,
Your money won't work more than a mile from home. They can turn it on and off. Your car, if you have an electric car, will also turn off. Okay?
unbelievable.
You can't buy gas if you have a diesel car. You can't, your money won't work. So let's say they mandate, I want you to take an injection full of, nanoparticles which help us build the internet of bodies. So I want you to inject this into yourself and your kids, right? And if you don't, I'm going to turn off your money. You either comply with the healthcare mandates that apply to your children, or we just turn off your money.
Mm,
Let's say I decide I need to raise taxes. I just raise taxes and take the money out of your account. You have taxation without representation. I control your money. It's my money. It's my bank account. It's not yours.
That's absolutely terrifying, and especially when you bring in the transhumanism element of this. You could even see in the near future, based on their research, their forums, their papers, their own words.
They're telling you this. If you go to Soleri, we have a section called Video Shorties,
Mhm.
and the first one has about 100 videos in it. It's just shorties on financial transaction freedom. So you click on Video Shorties, and then you click on Financial Transaction Freedom playlist, and what you get are the central bankers telling you, we can make the rules centrally, and we can enforce them centrally because we have the technology to do it. We're going to do it, and they're
Who
they're telling you this.
Right. Who has more power, the central bankers or the tech bros, or are they working together?
They're working together, but essentially, historically, the central bankers have had much more power.
Okay.
So, and we can get into that. Okay, so let's look at one of the most powerful things we can all do is refuse to let the system go all digital. We can keep analog alive, and
Mhm.
that's why for many years at Soleri we have a campaign, "Make Cash Great Again."
Yep, yep, love it,
Right,
love it.
and, so we have a "Make Cash Great Again" hat, and we have all sorts of things, but you can stop them. Keep cash alive in your life, in your community. If you use checks, and make sure you use those pens that can't be where they can't erase the ball. You never
Okay.
wanna use a ballpoint pen, you wanna use
Real ink.
the real ink, I use the razor tip.
Mhm.
But, you just wanna make sure, but keep checks and cash alive, keep money orders alive. One of the things they're trying to do to get it all digital is to privatize the post office in a way that so increases mailing costs, no one will be able to use the mail. It'll make it
So that's
absolutely
the reason they're going after the
Oh, yeah,
United
yeah,
States
yeah, yeah,
Post Office.
no,
Okay.
you wanna stop us. Once they shut you and I down, we can always go hard copy, right? They
Right.
wanna stop that. This is controlled. Go
Unbelievable.
back to the Revolutionary War. Benjamin Franklin was a printer. It was the printers who spread the word, right?
Wow,
Right.
wow,
Oh,
wow.
oh, yeah, yeah.
Now,
Now, and
Catherine, a lot of people.
if you
Yep.
look at all the things they've done to drive the price of the post office up, those are tricks. The the second Bush administration engineered a way of funding the pension things that would drive the prices in the economics up. So don't believe that the post office can't work. It can work.
Oh, that's horrifying. That now I people will also say to me, "Screw that, Shannon. We hate the dollar. They dollar is fiat currency, and they took it off the gold standard, and it's going to be
You
devalued."
have not heard one word from anybody other than Massey about stopping debt-based the currency. So
Mhm.
why did Lincoln get assassinated? Why did Andrew Jackson? Why did he have an assassination attempt? Because they wanted to do greenbacks. They were issuing currency directly from the Treasury without debt. You
And
know,
that's the difference from today. Today we have the Federal Reserve, which is the banksters, correct? And they,
right?
they have all kinds of mechanisms for cheating. We don't have to get into that today, but basically they're just stealing from us and printing money. Um, and so what you're saying is that what we should have is the federal government with oversight, printing money, hopefully.
We have the option, and they did this. If you go back and look at what happened in the Civil War, Kennedy started to issue Treasury currency from the Treasury without debt, and of course, we know what happened to Kennedy.
Wow.
Right.
Yep.
So
Okay.
there are two major control points that tend to get people assassinated. One is issuing currency without debt, number one, because that's the basis of freedom,
Right.
and two, whether or not the central bank is privately owned or owned by the government. And
Okay.
so there's a wonderful, one of the best books in the world on central banking is Princes of the Yen by Richard Werner, about the fight to try and get the Japanese central bank sort of private, and you'll see that. So um anyway, but you haven't heard one word from the Trump administration about the possibilities of, because that debt problem, it is a debt trap, but it's almost a scam created.
Right.
We could have issued the currency without it, and
Right.
I'm not suggesting that you do that. Before you listen, I'm always telling Congress Massey when he says, end the Fed. I said, wait, get the $21 trillion back first before
Right.
you end the Fed, because otherwise they get to keep it. But the other thing is, you don't want to end the Fed until you have a plan that produces something that's better than what you have now. And if
Mm,
you look at all the functions the Fed provides, if you don't provide for them in a responsible way, you're going to end up with something worse. So just make sure, we don't want to be against the negative. We want to go to the positive.
absolutely. Are
Right.
you optimistic about so many state actions in a variety of different ways to establish sovereign banks, get back onto a gold standard, establish gold and silver as legal
So
tender, all the
if
things?
you go to Solari, we have a wonderful study. We spent 2 years building it, working with state legislators. It's called What the States Can Do.
Okay.
And also for people who say, I don't know my state representative, we also have a big piece on how to get to know your state representatives. But what you are seeing all across the country is states pushing back and doing marvelous things.
That's
And so
right.
what we built was a major analysis of what are all the states can do to protect the legal and financial infrastructure for freedom. And
Amazing.
I would strongly recommend you get that. We just did a beautiful hard copy for our wrap up. If you're a subscriber, you can buy it. We'll give you discounts to buy, volumes. But I would get every one of those to your state representatives, your state treasurer, your state attorney general, your governor, because it lays out the blueprint of everything they can do to protect federal financial freedom. And the beauty of being an American, and the Europeans would just die for this, um,
Mhm.
is under the Constitution, the powers not delegated by the states to the federal government are reserved to the states. The
Let's
states are
go.
su- the states are superior. That's why you never want to have a constitutional convention, because they would love to get rid of that.
All right. So no
Okay.
to the Article 5 Convention of States. I was
No, no,
good.
no, no, no.
I was
Worst idea
hoodwinked by
yet.
that years ago. I,
Worst idea yet.
yeah.
Yeah.
So say no to the Article 5 Convention of States. We don't need it. We can do it from the bottom up organically. Let's keep going. Digital IDs. So we're talking about all of the aspects, all of the disparate parts of a centralized digital control system.
So a digital control system depends on very high quality, precise, carefully managed identification. They need to know you're Shannon, I'm Catherine, and they need to know it with great precision.
Right.
Okay. And so this comes back to different, and in the United States, they're doing it through the states and the federal government, creating a really high quality digital ID system. Now, the Real ID was created after the Patriot Act, and there has been a food fight for decades to get the states to implement this.
Mm-hmm.
And they're trying to force it through the transportation system and through the departments of motor vehicle, saying you have to get a Real ID. It's not true. And you brought up Twyla Bras has this great organization, Citizens Health Freedom, what Council for Citizens Health Freedom,
Yeah, I'll get it for
and
you. Yep, the
they
Citizens Council for Health Freedom.
right.
Amazing website, by the way.
Amazing website, and they have a new piece on why it's a lie. You don't have to. And if you go to our Twitter feed, it's hilarious. We just constantly, somebody will come on and say you have to get a Real ID, and I'll come back and say no, you don't, and give the link to Twala's sort of whole piece.
Yeah,
And so I have a passport. I don't need a Real ID at all. And
right.
what's frightening is if you look at the Real IDs that they're putting out, they'll have a yellow circle with a little white star, and so we're back to the yellow star thing.
Unbelievable.
Right.
The
It's
symbolism there, that they would
right.
make that the indicator of authenticity or
The
what is
Department of
to them.
Homeland Security, where have we heard that before? Where have we
Gee,
heard the Homeland?
the home it is
Okay, so
really
so
strange.
let's talk about something the Trump administration hasn't done. The last Trump administration, Dr. Mark Skidmore and I published a study in 2017 pointing out that there was 21 trillion now missing from the federal government. I had the number up to 12 trillion, and then a wonderful professor from Michigan State University, he and his students did a complete survey, and we discovered he got the number from 12 to 21 trillion.
Wow.
There, a brouhaha, sort of broke out about why DOD couldn't produce audited financial statements after, you know, more than 20 years of being required by law to do it. And the resolution was that the Trump administration, remember the Kavanaugh hearings?
Yes, I do.
Okay, during the Kavanaugh hearings, the House and the Senate, Republican and Democrat, and the Trump administration agreed to a little known policy called Federal Accounting Standards Advisory Board Statement 56, which basically said that a secret group of people by a secret process could take a secret amount out of the government financials, keep it dark, and then when you combine it with the national security laws and classification laws, it also applies to the contractors and banks working for the government. And
Wow.
so basically, the entire US securities market, or almost the entire, large cap market, bonds and stocks, when I look at it as an investment person, Shannon, I don't know what their financials mean. I stopped reading the federal government financials carefully and when they passed FASB 56 because I said I have no idea what's in and what's out. It's meaningless. Okay,
So
not
money
one.
disappearing, you say $21 trillion from the national
We have
treasury.
21 trillion of undocumentable transactions. So under the Constitution, you can't make a transaction without an appropriation approved by Congress. Okay. Now there are different rules to allow certain appropriations to be moved into the black budget, which is supposedly only overseen by one congressional committee. But what has happened progressively for years is that that has gotten looser and looser, and then they've just been ignoring it. And so now, and I'll go back, I was working with a group of the top pension fund leaders in the country in 1997, and I met with them to produce my program of how we could re-engineer the federal budget so the popsicle index and the S&P index could go up together in a way
Mm,
that would produce enormous wealth for the pension funds and the country. And our goal was that the pension funds could support people in retirement.
right.
And so we didn't have to lower life expectancy. We could keep our obligations, both our retirement obligations, whatever. And the head of the largest pension fund in the country from California looked at me and he said, "You don't understand. It's too late. They've given up on the country. They're moving all the money out starting in the fall." And
What?
yeah, and I thought he meant we, the pension funds, have been ordered to reallocate our equity investment to the emerging markets.
Right.
And what I realized 2 years later was no, he meant they're stealing all the money. So a process began in 1998 where the agencies would report, we can't produce audited financial statements, but we have this much or that much of undocumentable adjustments. And by 2015, there was 21 trillion. Remember, Donald Rumsfeld stood up before 9/11 and said, there's 2.3 trillion of undocumentable adjustments last year at the Department of Defense. I had a big story coming out. I was helping a researcher with a huge cover story in Insight magazine on
Mhm.
what was then $4 trillion of missing money. And I said to the reporter, nothing can stop this story from going viral now. Well, guess what? The story got delayed and then nobody cared because 9/11 happened the next day, right? And well, but
Unbelievable.
here's the thing, if you look at all the offices in the two World Trade Centers and then at the Pentagon, those were the offices that had files on the financing of the $4 trillion. So the office at the Pentagon was considered to be the office where they were doing an investigation of the money that was missing from DOD.
Things that make you go, "Hmm," right?
Exactly.
I'm
Exactly.
insane.
So by 2015 there was 21 trillion. Now, what I believe, you've now run up the debt. So let's talk about how the debt works. The primary dealers, the New York Fed primary dealers sell a treasury bond to your pension fund or
Okay.
your 401k or your IRA. The money, real money, goes into the New York Fed and they give it to the country, or they put it in the government's account.
Okay.
Then that money disappears out the back door.
Jeez,
Okay.
it's crazy.
And then they
It's
turn around and
insane.
tell you and say, Shannon, you have more debt. So
That is
now
BS. That's
wait a minute,
totally
wait a minute. So that now you, the taxpayer, owe the money to pay the debt to your own pension fund. So your pension fund doesn't have the money anymore. It has a treasury bond. And now you, the citizen, are in debt to your own pension fund.
that's
And
nasty. That is
right, right. So
wow.
the treasury has become a laundry device. Now, if you look at what they're doing with the Treasury payment data, for all I know, they're whiting out the whole trail.
Right, right,
I
right.
don't know what they're
Well,
doing.
because this is what Naomi Wolf uncovered
Right.
in her stellar reporting on Doge, among others, and
Right.
the very intimate weekend that Elon Musk had with our Treasury Department and all of our information.
Well,
So,
but here's the thing. There are three things you can steal from the federal government, and one thing you want to leave. Okay. The first thing you can steal is you can run up the debt and soak as much money out of the back door.
yep,
Okay. And that game's up. Okay. The second thing you can steal, the way to build the world's greatest AI is to have the best data. And not only the most data, but the most precise payment data. The most
mhm,
valuable payment data in the world is in the Social Security, IRS, and Treasury system.
yep,
Okay. So then you just take that data. And I remember Naomi in one interview saying it's worth $1 trillion or more. She's right. That data is that valuable. Okay. So you
yeah,
take the data. What's the last thing you take? The federal balance sheet, according to Howard Lutnick, the Secretary of Commerce, has $500 trillion worth of land and mineral resources. And
mhm.
when you get into what they're talking about with the sovereign wealth fund and the digital strategic reserve, the crypto strategic or Bitcoin strategic reserve, then you're talking about a whole series of different possibilities to privatize or piratize that land. Okay.
Piratize, like a pirate.
Pir- so privatization, if I sell a piece of real estate, if I privatize it, if that real estate is worth $1 million and I sell it to somebody in the private sector for $1 million, that's privatization. If I
Mhm,
sell it to them for 50,000, that's piratization.
and that's what's happening.
The land movements haven't started that we know of yet, although they've been cutting contracts in real estate and other things. But as far as I know, the work in the sovereign wealth fund and with the digital Bitcoin strategic reserve, all these different things they're working on the plans for. And
Okay,
I think the big play here is the land grab. What 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 now? Once you've stolen the data you need, and there's more data to steal, but
right.
once you've stolen that, what you're after is the land and mineral resources.
Once again, the hard assets, the real
Right.
physical assets. And so what they're
Right.
doing is using this kind of madman magical trick. It's like a quick change artist to with all the stable coins, bitcoins, tokens, all these things. They're messing with our economy, really
Well,
putting it
yeah,
very
but it's more complicated than that because let's talk about what they're the situation that they're in. Legitimately, the Secretary of the State gave one of his first interviews, and he said, "We're moving from a unipolar world to a multipolar world." So the strategy for unipolar empire failed.
that means the US is unipolar. The US at the top of the heap controlling everything is unipolar.
Right.
They're saying
Right.
that's over. Our
Right.
empire days are over. We're moving into
So,
multipolar.
we
Oh,
lost in the Ukraine so far.
yeah.
And so what Secretary Rubio said is now we've got to move to a multipolar world. And he did it. I got to give him credit. He did a very elegant, impressive job of sort of explaining all of that.
If Biden or Obama said that, everyone in MAGA would lose their minds. Why aren't you America first? Why, you
Right.
know what I mean? Like they would have gone bananas. But because it's coming from like our team, they
Well,
don't
but
care.
here's the reality. The reality is the unipolar model failed.
Well,
So
yes,
now we have to move to the multipolar model. And that is a gut-wrenching change. You have to change the Bretton Woods trade system.
mm,
And so part of what you're watching the president and his team do is grapple with how we're going to do that. And it's not an easy job, it's a hard job to do. So what we can't do, if you and I were sitting in the Oval Office, we'd have to be doing it too. And it's going to bring about a whole lot of change that makes people uncomfortable. And if you listen to some of the criticism of the administration, they're all saying, wah, 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 I don't want to change. Well, wah, 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 you got to change because
mm.
the world is moving to a multipolar world and we can't stop it.
Well,
So
and I would
we have
say
to change.
yeah, and I would say as conservatives, just as an observer over my 47 years, I've always been a conservative. I've always been a Republican, a Christian. I think we were really sold a bill of goods about America being an empire. Like, I don't think America was ever meant to be an empire. We were meant to be a representative republic,
Right.
confined by a constitution that elevates God-given natural rights, rule of law, separation of power, and try to create based all on free markets, which are fair, meaning you don't have government handouts to corporations. You don't have people like Elon, like the biggest
Right,
welfare.
but here's the problem the leadership has had. If you're trying to run a global reserve currency and a global trade system, and your governmental structure is set up for a domestic government, you have an inherent conflict. And that's
Well,
when they
right.
said, we give up on the country, we're moving all the money out. They just said, okay, we're going to, just totally re-engineer government and change the whole model on a just do it method. We're not going to tell everybody, we're just going to take the money and run. And that's what they're
Well,
doing.
and this is the way it looks to me is that all of the people in power in the US, president included, Elon included, they just don't care. They're like, we're going to plunder. We're going to do all this stuff. We're going to do what we're told. We're going to totally screw the American people, rip up our constitution and the founding of this country, take away free markets, individual sovereignty. And they're just going to, what they're going to get some villa in some new like global community that has gates. I mean, it seems as if you said this word, it seems as if they're plundering. They know this is coming. They're lying to our faces and they're just plundering.
So that's what it looks like to me. It looks like to me we're coming into a period. But if you look at the people in the Trump administration, and you can see this from the Netanyahu visit, they're not in control.
No,
They are not in control. So
no,
whether it's they're dependent on their allowance from dad, or it's Netanyahu ordering them what to do with his major donors, ordering them what to do. I mean, the clear message of the meeting in the Oval Office was Netanyahu's the boss.
right.
Trump pushing in his chair for him again, the way he did in the last meeting. The real message is, hey, these guys aren't the boss. So what we have to understand is we're watching a show. I'm not saying that the president doesn't have power. I'm not saying he's not doing real things, but the reality is that's not how the system works. And we've been going along. Our message to the federal government and the people in charge is, as long as we get our check, we'll go along.
Mm-hmm.
Well, guess what? Now they're building a control grid, and when it snaps into place, they don't have to give us the check anymore.
Right. And not only will we not have our checks, we won't have our livelihoods, our liberty, our economy, our constitution, our God-given natural rights. Like all of those things are erased if we let them do this. And the answer is here, we can't let them do it. We got to go to break. We have one more break to take. When we come back, we're going to go back to Catherine Austin Fitts and we're going to talk about the good news, right? This is scary, but as Catherine has always said, the first step in resisting this and winning against these tyrants is to never, ever, ever let them make you fearful. And so that comes with preparation and knowledge and truth. And we're going to get into that space when we come back with the amazing Catherine Austin Fitts. We'll be back in a moment. Shannon Joy here with an urgent retirement warning. Trade tensions, tariffs, and China's relentless attack on the US dollar have rattled the markets. This is why Warren Buffett just dumped $133 billion in stocks. And so has Jeff Bezos, Larry Page, and even Jamie Dimon, CEO of the world's largest bank. Just recently, Rich Dad Poor Dad author Robert Kiyosaki warned of a coming market crash. This is why thousands of informed IRA and 401k savers are now shielding their savings with gold. And the experts at Colonial Metals Group are the only folks I trust to help you do the exact same. Visit www.colonialmetalsgroup.com/joy or call 888-705-0950. You'll get a free gold guide on how to bulletproof your wealth with gold tax-free. Plus, see if you qualify for a free home safe and as much as $7,500 in free silver. Once again, that's www.colonialmetalsgroup.com/joy or call 888-705-0950 to protect your wealth today. Finding an honest doctor who isn't just following the script handed down by Big Pharma can feel like searching for a needle in a haystack. That's why millions of men and women have turned to this one dedicated Texas doctor of physical therapy who's sharing 7 compelling reasons why anyone over 50 should be drinking this one thing. And that one thing is Native Path Collagen. Collagen is a unique protein that naturally declines as we age, but it's proven to significantly boost bone strength and soothe joint pain. It minimizes wrinkles and cellulite, enhances hair follicle thickness, and even helps reverse nail damage. Many users of Native Path Collagen have seen results in as little as 2 weeks. And for this audience, they have an amazing special. They're offering up to 45% off Native Path Collagen right now at getnativepathcollagen.com/joy. That's getnativepathcollagen.com/joy. With over 8,000 five-star reviews and more than 5 million jars sold, plus a 365-day money-back guarantee, you have nothing to lose and everything to gain. So go to getnativepathcollagen.com/joy today. That's getnativepathcollagen.com for the special 45% off and free shipping. And make sure you get it fast because this deal is ending this week. So head over there now and get your collagen. Welcome back, everyone, to the Shannon Joy Show. Those Chef's Foundry sizzle sets are on discount right now for the Joy audience, 45% off. If you go to chefsfoundry.com/joy, that's chefsfoundry.com/joy, and you will be able to access those discounts. Welcome back to the Shannon Joy Show, to the amazing Catherine Austin Fitts. I thought it was interesting. You mentioned the show, Catherine, as we moved out of the last segment. I've coined the term DC reality TV, or reality. And I am absolutely convinced. I mean, when you look at Trump, his history, I mean, he started out as a WWF wrestler, then he moved into reality TV with The Apprentice. Then he comes down the elevator and he just plays that part so well. It's interesting. I'm dying to get your thoughts on the Bill Maher 12-minute opening monologue after his sit down with President Trump, where he was like, this guy is not the same person. There's the front facing lunatic, right? And then there's the guy behind the scenes who is, affable, friendly, listens, all the thing, super charming. And I thought that was really interesting. I mean, some might call him a sociopath, to be honest, that he could turn it on and off. But doesn't that just lend to this idea that we're not getting the full picture here?
So here's the thing. So, I call Trump the P.T. Barnum of American politics.
So true.
He's the ringmaster, and I have to, as a showman, he's an A plus. He's the best showman of a generation.
Yes,
You
he
got
is.
you got to give him credit. But
Yeah.
remember, let's go back to the red button story and the story of I Am Good. He's giving people, the trade off in politics. If you give me a check and a lie I can feel good about, I'll go along. So everybody wants the story of I'm good. We're going to Iraq not to kill them and take their oil. We're going to Iraq to free women, right? So everybody wants the story of I'm good, and he's giving the crowd what they want,
Right.
right? So what I've never talked to Trump, but what politicians used to tell is, this is what the people want. The people want us to give them lies. That's what we're paid to do. So, it goes back to the guy from Idaho who said, every year we send $1 to Washington, we get $1.19 back. And my constituents tell me they don't want the Constitution, they want the 19 cents.
Well, and
Right?
this is an important message for people to understand, that we, the people, are complicit in this very dysfunctional
Yes.
cycle that we're in.
Right.
that we're in
We
today,
right.
right? I mean, it's
Well, the reason to face that is it gives us the power.
right, right.
That you have to face that. That's the doorway you have to walk through to see we have the power. And in fact, I remember once being in Washington, then there's a big march, And one guy turned to me and he said, "Look, as long as they have a Citibank credit card in their pocket, I don't care if they march up and down Pennsylvania Avenue."
Mm.
Right?
Right, right.
Right? What he was saying is, as long as their money's in our bank, they're on board for the system. So
Mm,
anyway, so now what I'm told by people who know Trump well is he's a very intelligent, thoughtful guy, and when you sit down with him, it's a different personality.
right.
He's not being the ringmaster, he's not being the showman.
Yeah. I
So,
mean, I think
but this is a guy who's deeply experienced with reality TV. He if you go to ID the database of all the movies, what is it, IMDb or whatever?
IMDb. Yep.
Yeah, if you look at his credits, he's got an amazing number of credits, and he's in that database, and he's a real. I mean, if you look at his resume, it's quite impressive.
I didn't realize he was actually a WWF like, he was on the roster on, like, he wrestled with Vince McMahon. It's insane. It's insane, but I take it a step further. I think he's a predator, to be frank. I think that he knows a mark when he sees a mark, and he's gonna take it. He is not going I don't see him as a nice, affable guy, just
Well,
personally.
he had a reputation in New York. So I lived in New York for 11 years, and Trump was, and in fact, the PR firm that we used at Dillon Reed also did Trump.
Okay.
And so I would hear a lot about Trump from the guys working at the PR firm. Anyway, so I knew a little bit about Trump, and the word was he would stiff all the small businesses and
Absolutely.
play dirty games, and
Yep. Yep.
he played hardball.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
right.
stone cold killer that, knows how to put on a good show. Not an actual killer, I'm not saying that.
Well, one of
Stone
one of
cold.
our problems. So I got a message the other day from Asia, and somebody said, everywhere you turn in the media, the headline is they're lining up to kiss my ass, and they said, I can't tell you this is destroying all goodwill for America throughout Asia.
Yeah,
It's just destroying goodwill,
yeah,
and the reality is, you know, you would only do that. Somebody as intelligent as Trump is only going to do it if that's what's desired.
yeah, yeah. Well, and there's a payout at the end, they think, but not if
Well,
we resist.
here
Not
here's
if
part
we the people
here's
let's
part here's part of the problem. If you look at the allegations around insider trading on the meme coin, or family trading on the meme coin,
mm,
or insider trading on the
nasty.
digital, the announcement of the Bitcoin reserve, or some of these other things, the rumors and allegations about grift are enormous. And if you look at what it looks like to me has been stolen on Doge, the
Mhm.
grift is off the charts,
Yeah,
and you're not going to command respect in the business community, and you're not going to command globally if you're just seen as a bunch of grifters. And the problem is, what they're trying to implement are very complicated plans and require enormous alignment and coordination from all sorts of different institutions, and they're not going to get it. And that's why,
ah,
you can say that, what's happening has been thought out and is logical, or what's been happening is, they're making it up by the seat of their pants. But let's assume for a second it's rational. If it's rational, the goal is plunder, because this is what will most just, drop the prices.
right. Well, and so here's the question, and that leads me to the final, where we want to get with this. You mentioned this is quite complicated, taking down a massive economy like the United States of America to plunge us into chaos so that they can work their will with us and move us into the digital control system, right? That's a lot more complicated, and it's not as easy. I get the sense as sometimes they would want us to think it is, right? Like there are things that we can do specifically at the local and state level to stop them in the same way that we stopped a lot of their plans during COVID-19.
Right.
35% of Americans who refused to take the poison shots. That was a
Right.
critical number, and it was a critical resistance. And I believe we need to muster up that resistance again as we move through the next 12 months. So, what does that look like, Catherine? And what do we need to do to say, oh, hell no to these bastards? You're not going to get away with this. We want our Constitution, our liberty, our freedom, our livelihoods, our children. And yeah, we want a little analog too. Okay. We don't have
Right.
to be into the control system.
So the first thing you need to do, I used to have a pastor would say, if we can face it, God can fix it.
There we go.
You need to first, it's a faith walk. This is absolutely a faith walk. And if you look at the history of freedom, it always looks hopeless, but people who have faith and are committed to freedom, it's a faith walk. So
Mm,
it's no different this time. the first thing you have to do, let's bring up a graphic. So every year on the Solari report, we do scenarios. And our scenarios, we take two different variables and we lay them out high to low, and we show four different scenarios to help you with your planning. And what we did in the last, in our last in January, is our two variables are your response to change. Is your response inventive or is it fearful? So it can be inventive or it can be fearful. The other was jurisdiction. Are you in a good resilient jurisdiction where people protect freedom and help each other with food, energy, or are you in a highly dependent jurisdiction? And so that maps out four scenarios, and you can see there's only one scenario you want to be in, and
Mm,
that's what we call the building wealth scenario, where you have an inventive response to change. I'm not saying don't, when you see terrible things happen, don't feel the fear. What I'm saying is don't live in fear, stay in fear, because what we've seen over the last 10 years, the thing that gets people killed and the thing that causes them to lose their life or their money or their health is fear.
right.
Fear is how you get manipulated and controlled. So go back up to the top, and what you'll see is you want to be in a resilient jurisdiction. So one of the reasons I moved to Tennessee was I wanted to be in a jurisdiction where I really felt I could, so I bought a property in a low cost area. I have water, I have, neighbors that I know, I have family, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So think in very practical ways: food, shelter, clothing. Where are the insurance costs low? Where are there no income taxes? Where do you have low property taxes? Where do you have people, family, neighbors that you can trust, where you can work together? Can you invest? I have wonderful subscribers who invested to, take out their local utilities and put in they have a big furnace where they have trees that fall down on their property. They have lots of land, so they can
Okay.
take the trees and they have this like big oven and they can heat the house with that, but they also have solar. So they invested the time and money and they built their own energy system, and they're saving a fortune on their
Amazing.
utility bill. So,
Amazing. Yep.
right. So where can you build resiliency in a way that's a good investment of your time? Ev- Everybody's different and their situation is different. So build that local resiliency and get into inventive mode, because remember, if suddenly the economics of what we can do globally are changing and we're going to deglobalize, there's so much more we can do locally. Where is your entrepreneurial opportunity for your company? For example, I was just looking at a global chain of junkyards,
Okay.
and one of the most talented entrepreneurs I know in Tennessee said, I'm going to start. I'm going to buy a junkyard. No, but think about it. Think of all the cars we have to keep going for another 10 years. We're going to
Mhm.
have to be buying and stripping parts, right?
Right. Right.
Right. So
Well,
so where is I once read a book about how everybody made money building companies during the Great Depression. So there are going to be tremendous opportunities to bring things home locally or regionally or nationally. Where's the opportunity for you?
it sounds like emancipation in so many ways, right? Going back, you've mentioned often that the most valuable commodity of the 21st century is going to be relationships of trust, right?
Right. Right.
Human beings, human connections, human relationships, and then those other things: air, water, food, commerce, especially locally. And I really could envision in the future, Catherine, using technology, the best things about technology, to foster complete emancipation from so many of the control grids, right? The way
Right.
we
So
control.
you want to have a balance of digital and analog.
There we go.
So the thing that keeps the digital honest is analog. The thing that makes the analog more efficient is digital. So you
Right.
want to have a balance of both. It's not either or. But you really want to make sure, number one, that your faith and your mind is clear and strong. And that means you cannot get addicted. If you look at all the ways they brainwash people,
Mm,
it's getting you online or getting you on your smartphone, getting you addicted to gambling, getting you addicted to porn. And while you're on there, they can, they are pouring into your subconscious all sorts of things that
mm.
make it easier to control your mind.
Absolutely.
Right,
Absolutely. And then substances as well. So, there's
right.
probably a reason that they are pushing pot so hard in the country right now. It's like, oh my gosh, we hate cigarettes, but let's go for pot. Everyone get on it. It's insane when you think about it. But
Right.
They really do. They want us fat, happy, lazy, stoned, high, drunk, on porn, all the things. And
Well, but
they've been
right.
pushing this on the culture for so
But
long,
here's the thing. You can't trust the traditional systems. You just can't trust them.
right?
But there are thousands, if not millions, of great people in the healthcare space, in the financial space, in the, you have entrepreneurs throughout the economy who are building things that are trustworthy.
Right.
And you have to find them. One of the reasons I'm here doing all the meet and greets for spring, so we do 2 months of meet and greets in the spring, 2 months in the fall, and we're gathering people together because there are so many people you can trust. There's so many people who are working on real solutions and doing businesses, or homeschoolers that are getting together, or gardeners that are getting together. So we do Solari circles where people meet up, and you have to find yourself. You have to find the like-minded people who are going to go to work. It was really funny. I was sitting at a meet and greet, and somebody was saying to me, and I hear this all the time, there's nobody like me around me. There's nobody who's like-minded. So I said, where do you live? And I turned to the person next to them. They were a block away from each other.
See, there we go. There we go. And this is a great moment. Thank you, Catherine, for so much wisdom today. So much wisdom. And Catherine's going to be in Rochester, New York. Actually, this is a
Right.
great way to announce
I'm going to
that.
be there visiting the out of control grid.
Let's go. See, she listen. That says something. When Catherine Austin Fitz, you have hope for New York State coming to Rochester, New York on May 17th. Is it, or May 18th? What do I have here? I should have that date. It is Monday.
Hold on, I'm looking at the book. I'm looking at the book. Hold on.
We'll let you know. Wait, it's
It's May.
19th. Monday, May 19th.
Yeah,
All
Monday, May
right.
19th.
And the location is to be determined, but this is going to be an intimate gathering here in Rochester, New York, of like-minded people with
Out of control people.
let's go. Let's go. I'm a little crazy. Everyone knows it, right? Catherine, thank you so much. Make sure you guys get that
Thank you, Shannon.
Solari report. Go to solari.com, solari.com. You are a treasure. And we're going to have you again very soon to talk about more of the pressing issues of the day.
And happy Easter. He is risen.
Let's go. Happy Easter. He is risen. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Catherine. All right, guys, you guys are amazing. Thank you for being with us today. We'll be back tomorrow to do it all again right here on the Shannon Joy Show.